David Leslie, 1st Lord Newark, was a cavalry officer and general in the English Civil War and Scottish Civil Wars. A son of Patrick Leslie, 1st Lord Lindores, he fought for the Swedish army of Gustavus Adolphus as a professional soldier during the 30 Years' War. He had entered Swedish service in 1630, serving as a captain in the regiment of Alexander Leslie. David Leslie was one of the Scots who transferred from Swedish to Russian service under Alexander Leslie of Auchintoul in 1632 to participate in the Smolensk War and was mentioned by name in Auchintoul's testimonial. David Leslie reappeared in the Swedish army in 1634 where he served as a colonel and thereafter Field Marshal Johan Banner's adjutant general, with whom he participated at the battle at Woodstock in 1636. Leslie petitioned to leave Swedish service in August 1640 after being wounded in battle. The Swedish Riksrad records show that he and Colonel James Lumsden asked to return to Scotland at the same time. The seriousness of Leslie's wounds are questionable, and it is likely that they were summoned home to support Alexander Leslie's Army of the Covenant, then participating in the Bishops' Wars against Charles I. Both these officers were rewarded with a severance deal which included 200 muskets and 200 suits of armor each. Leslie also received a valuable gold chain as an indication of his loyal service to the Swedish crown. The Stuart ambassador in Hamburg, Sir Thomas Roe, informed London of Leslie's departure with Colonel Lumsden and 24 other Scottish officers from that city. They arrived in Scotland after the Bishops' Wars had effectively ended. Civil War. After the Parliaments of Scotland and England agreed the Solemn League and Covenant in 1643, David Leslie became a Major General under Alexander Leslie, now Earl of Leven, in the army of the Solemn League and Covenant, which was sent to fight alongside the forces of the English Parliament in 1644. He played an important role that day at the critical Battle of Marston Moor, west of York, by leading a successful cavalry charge against the Royalist Cavaliers while Oliver Cromwell was wounded. This allowed the infantry time to regroup and eliminate the Royalist battalion led by another former colleague, Lieutenant General James King, Lord Lindores. David Leslie subsequently commanded the force that besieged Carlisle, Cumbria. In 1645, Leslie was sent back to Scotland to deal with the Royalists during the Scottish Civil War. He routed the main Royalist force under James Graham, Marquess of Montrose, at the Battle of Philiphaugh, and afterwards mopped up the remaining Royalists in Kintyre in the west of Scotland. At Philiphaugh he captured his old commanding officer Alexander Leslie of Auchintoul, for whom he intervened personally to save him from execution. Auchintoul was one of a handful of survivors and was spared execution, but was banished for life, leading to his return to Russia. In 1647 Leslie besieged Darnaverty Castle, which was a Clan MacDonald's stronghold. The MacDonalds surrendered and then perhaps 300 of them were killed. Leslie then laid siege to the Royalist garrison at Kincardine Castle. The castle was being held by the chief of Clan MacNab. When MacNab found that it would not be possible to maintain defense, he led the defenders, sword in hand, at the head of 300 men, who cut the way through the besieging force. All made it through apart from the MacNab chief himself and one other man, who were captured and sent to Edinburgh as prisoners of war. The chief was sentenced to death, but he escaped, rejoined King Charles and continued to fight. MacNab was later killed at the Battle of Worcester in 1651. In 1650, after Montrose had made another attempt at a Royalist uprising, he was captured by Neil MacLeod of Astlin. MacLeod, who had fought with Montrose at the siege of Inverness, delivered him up to the Covenanters. General Leslie, who was then at Tain, sent Major General James Holborn with a troop of horse to fetch Montrose to meet his judges. skirmishes. Whilst Montrose was being led to his death, Leslie dispatched 5 troops of horse, including some from Holborn's and the John Gordon, 14th Earl of Sutherland's regiments, to Dunbeath Castle. The defenders refused to yield, holding out valiantly for some days until the water supply was cut off, forcing them to surrender. They were finally marched under escort to Edinburgh, where Montrose was executed. Royalist from 1650. By 1650, the Scottish Covenanter government had grown disillusioned with the English Parliament, and instead backed Charles II in the hope that, in return for the support against his English enemies, he would impose the political and religious agenda on Great Britain. Leslie accordingly now found himself fighting for the king. When the Parliamentarian army under Oliver Cromwell invaded Scotland in July 1650, Leslie commanded the Scottish forces. By refusing battle, Leslie withstood Cromwell's attempts to attack Edinburgh, and when the English were forced to retreat in August 1650, he pursued them down the east coast, eventually trapping 11,000 English soldiers south of Dunbar. Although the 14,000-strong Scottish army had the numerical advantage, divisions within the Committee of Estates and constructing Leslie gave Cromwell the opportunity to inflict a decisive defeat on the Scottish at the Battle of Dunbar on 3 September 1650. Leslie escaped with a tiny remnant of his army, which then joined Charles II's royalist forces in the Stirling area. Leslie led the royalist army on another invasion of England in 1651, where he was again defeated by Cromwell, at the Battle of Worcester on 3 September 1651. After his capture, he was sent to the Tower of London. Released from captivity on the restoration of Charles II in 1660, Leslie was granted the title Lord Newark. David Leslie, 1st Lord Newark, died in 1682. His son David was the 2nd Lord Newark. His daughter Jean Leslie styled herself as 3rd Lady Newark, as a lady in her own right. She married Sir Alexander Anstruther of Anstruther in 1694, and the sons William and Alexander were known semi-officially as the 4th and 5th Lords Newark.